we've got a very special guest we're about to bring into the studio. He is not only a great journalist, he's also a great friend, and he is as good as it gets in the journalism game of all politics you could think of.
So for anybody paying attention to my little graphic that I put out the other day, Jordan is actually a journalist.
Yes.
That's somebody who actually does investigative reporting and is like a primary resource. And I try to say it's like sort of, journalism for dummies kind of thing. So we like people know the difference between journalists and talking heads. And actually, Jordan's a talking head as well, but he does do his own reporting.
Yeah, but his talking's pretty good. So I think we can we'll live with the talking head. And I think you really knocked it out of the park, my friend. Yeah. I had an opportunity to look a little bit at the story today, and I'm not going to dive into it. This is your wheelhouse. So everybody, this is Jordan Chariton from Status Coup. If you are watching, hit the like button, subscribe.
Look, I did my little chalk.
Did a little design for you in the background, my friend.
We're very high tech here with the chalkboard.
And where's my purple shirt? I don't get one.
You're getting one soon. I'll get you one.
Well, we still no, because we need to get our jerseys. I'm getting generational change jerseys.
Get you a jersey. We were watching your website and saw the merch, and you've done a great job.
Merch.
Before we even get started, do you think that having mugs is a good idea? I mean, is it a good ROI? Just out of curiosity.
That would be Jen who knows that, but I'm pretty sure we're making next to nothing on our merchandise.
That's the thing. Exactly. It says it. All right. So everybody, Jordan's going to talk about this big story that he just uncovered and put together. And it's, it goes back to Iowa, and we knew that we knew something was awry. Like we knew something wasn't good. We just knew that. And I think this will be more of like a concrete explanation as to what happened in Iowa.
And again, for anybody who is on the, everything is rigged and everything is stolen bandwagon, especially with the Trumpers and whatnot, this is what real electoral fraud looks like. This is what this is. So Jordan, take it away.
Yeah, so I was on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire, so everybody knows what happened in Iowa. I think what people didn't realize was really the behind the scenes of like how much the DNC basically rigged it. Yeah. I mean, to me, it goes beyond fraud. It requires like a criminal investigation. So basically, after the Iowa caucus, there was an investigation put together into what went wrong. And incidentally, the person investigating was a former U.S. attorney appointed by President Obama. So that was who was investigating.
No conflict of interest there.
No,
right.
What could go wrong?
So the investigation was so thorough that essentially the DNC did not cooperate. The DNC would not speak with the investigators. The investigators would not actually compel them to give over documents, emails, phone logs, anything. So when the report, air quotes, the report was released last week, at the same time the report was released, there was a closed session, which means closed to the public, meeting among the Iowa State Democratic Party. So, I've built up sources over the years on the campaign trail. So I was able, through some sources, to get my hands on the transcript from that private Iowa State party. And basically the attorney that was doing the investigation said a lot of things in that meeting that were not made public in the Politico report, which the Politico report kind of read like a DNC press release. So essentially what happened here was the Democratic National Committee basically, first of all, the Democratic National Committee wanted this app. Sources that I have indicated that they were pretty ticked off and not happy with how 2016 went, a little too close to comfort in terms of Bernie almost won Iowa. I mean, I would say he probably did. So they wanted to kind of muddy the waters a little bit. So they created an app, which never happened before, like for forever and ever. They just did it the old fashioned way. They called in via phone from the precincts. And
you need an app. You have to have an app. How could it be done without an app?
Right. So the DNC asked the state party to basically have a software developer create an app. The app was developed by veterans of Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, so no conflict of interest there. Then 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus, the DNC mandated that the app named Shadow, the company, create a whole new software so that the DNC could have access to the real-time raw numbers coming in the Iowa caucus.
Have they ever had that before? Like, why did they get that?
As far as I know, no. And as far as I know from talking to people involved with New Hampshire politics, Nevada, the DNC was not heavy-handed like that in those other states. They were not demanding to see the real-time numbers.
Right.
In America, even though I think it's a bad system anyway, the system's supposed to be each state is run by the state parties, not the DNC. So the DNC mandated that we want to see the numbers before they're made public. By the way, let's just remember, this wasn't in my story, but all of this happened at the same time, like for the first time, the Des Moines Register poll, which is kind of like the holy grail of Iowa politics.
Yeah.
Everybody, like political nerds, are waiting on the Saturday before the caucus for the final Des Moines Register poll. That inexplicably gets spiked because Pete Buttigieg complains that one person polled wasn't given Pete Buttigieg as a choice.
And who's to say that wasn't an inside job? Who's to say that actually happened?
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't. That's
Well, I can't say for certain, but I'll say that I'm pretty sure that if Bernie's campaign called the Des Moines Register and complained that one of our supporters was polled and not given us as an option, that the poll would have went out without a problem. And the poll was eventually leaked. It showed that Bernie was in first place, Pete was in third place. So we go to Iowa caucus night. This private meeting that I got the transcript of actually also revealed they actually had the results on the night of the caucus. They had the same results on the night of the caucus that ended up coming out 5 days later. It basically showed a tie between Buttigieg and Bernie, like one.
They stalled it. They stalled it.
Yeah. Basically, Perez told the state party, do not report the results, because this software that the DNC made them create 2 weeks before the caucus, shocker, there was a coding error. So the DNC, the numbers they were getting were I guess, wrong. But you got to backtrack. And James Sogby, who's been with the DNC for 28 years, he's a Bernie supporter. He said to me for the story, like, why did the DNC need to see the numbers?
Yeah.
Why didn't they just trust the state parties? So, I just report what I know. I've never heard of that before. I've never heard, I do know that, who else wants to see numbers before, like during elections? The mafia.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like JFK's election, the mafia was involved. That's just historical. Mexican drug cartels have wanted to see the real-time numbers so that they could intimidate voters at the polling places not to vote. I mean, this is just so. Yeah. Bottom line, Tom Perez blocked it. It was delayed for days. In that delay, Pete Buttigieg went out on the night of the caucus, claimed victory. Corporate media pushed this narrative that he won. I saw the the domino effect from there, because in Iowa, where I went next, Pete got a 10% polling bump.
Yeah, because people don't realize the snowball effect of this. They don't understand that. It's like the one thing is not an isolated thing. It doesn't work that way. When you mess with Iowa, it messes the whole chain of events.
Well, I mean, honestly, to me, listen, Bernie's campaign made mistakes. Bernie made a lot of mistakes. I've addressed it with my audience. But at the end of the day, let's just say they reported the results on that night, and it was basically a tie. So Pete Buttigieg can't go out like claiming victory because it's a tie. Oh, yeah. The media would have spun it. They would have said, wait a minute, Bernie should have won because he was close with whatever. But Pete Buttigieg does not get to do that. And I went to New Hampshire, and this is anecdotal, but a lot of politics is anecdotal. I went to a high school 2 days before the New Hampshire primary Pete event. There was like people around the block, and I interviewed them online, and most of them said, yeah, I wasn't really considering him, but after Iowa and winning, I want to check him out. So it's like manufacturing consent
bias. It's like confirmation bias.
Right. Manufacturing consent is a real thing. I think, frankly, Bernie's campaign was asleep at the switch. I think they should have been in court challenging that. So, and people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the DNC is actually a private corporation. It's not a governmental body. So essentially there's no real, their lawyer in court, if you recall the DNC fraud lawsuit from 2016, openly said, technically we could go in the back with cigars and choose the nominee. So yeah, this had a really downstream effect. The polling bump Pete got, Bernie only won New Hampshire by a point.
Exactly.
And the media, again, spun that. So I think, to me, if the results come out that night in Iowa, if it's basically tied, Pete doesn't get that huge bump, Bernie probably wins New Hampshire by 3 to 5 points. Then let's look at the other downstream effects. I mean, this is all shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I think it's likely. There's probably a lot more pressure on Elizabeth Warren to drop out after New Hampshire if Bernie wins New Hampshire a little bit more convincingly. She just lost Iowa. She lost the state that's in her backyard. So Bernie probably would have won New Hampshire closer to 4 to 5 points without this narrative that Pete Buttigieg won. From there, who knows? Nevada could have been bigger. I mean, who knows if he would have won? I mean, there was a lot of other things that happened, but I think that overall, what my story shows, and there's other things in that private meeting, Iowa State Party members are basically grilling the attorneys. Like, what do you mean the DNC didn't cooperate? Like, what does that mean? How do you have an investigation without their cooperation? And the investigators were basically like, yeah, no, they wouldn't cooperate, but didn't really give any specifics. There was other things the Iowa State Party members openly said, like the DNC is trying to get rid of us. They want to strip Iowa of its first in the nation caucus status, which the people of Iowa take really seriously.
Yes,
they find it prestigious. But overall, I think if you read the story, it will show, we just had a fucking criminal investigation for 4.5 years into the Russian boogeyman. I wasn't necessarily against it. I was against the media propaganda surrounding it. But if you're going to have a criminal investigation into basically unproven speculation on Trump's ties with Russia, then why aren't we going to have a criminal investigation into actual proven? I mean, I've reported what the lawyer revealed. Why aren't we going to have a criminal investigation into what was Tom Perez's role into this? What was other executives' role into this? We also remember with this delay, there were people on Twitter that were just Bernie volunteers that were at these precincts posting their sheets saying, wait a minute, why is this precinct reported as going to, I don't know, Buttigieg or Biden when I have the sheet right here and Bernie won this precinct? So I don't even know if the actual numbers they reported were accurate because it was a gigantic mess. And I really think that was the point, Jen and Peter. I think the point among the DNC was to, they talk about Russia wants to sow chaos and confusion. I really think that was the point because, I mean, they're not stupid. They saw Bernie's campaign was even stronger from 2016 to 2020, more volunteers, more grassroots fundraising, better in the polling. They saw Biden's like kind of politically dead carcass limping along. They tried to prop up Kamala. That didn't work. Tried to prop up Pete. That wasn't working. They tried to prop up, everybody. So I really think, listen, progressives are exhausted. There's a pandemic. There's forced to vote. There's trying to get the real stimulus money. There's so many things. But at the end of the day, to me, I think all those other things are moot if we can't guarantee free and fair elections. Because, Jen, it's not only about electoral politics, but electoral politics is important. And I think, looking forward, let's say it's 2024, hypothetically, it's Nina Turner as the candidate. If the DNC is not held accountable, if they're not removed from having any part of this, how do you assure thousands of volunteers that volunteered for Bernie and other campaigns, to be fair, millions of people that donated, how do you make sure they're not defrauded?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And again, the way I see it and the way I saw it, a while back, as Jen has built an amazing volunteer network around the country. We had people from down here that actually went up to Iowa. And I can distinctly remember speaking to a couple of them who said, we had a couple that spoke Spanish and they were going out to places outside of Des Moines. And they were already, prior to caucus night, dealing with issues of people being told to go to certain, locations for the caucus that were incorrect. They were already getting misdirection, and we were trying to get that word out there as fast and furious as possible. But talk about what I think is really the main issue here, and that is the power of the corporate media gatekeeper and how they stop a story like this from ever really taking shape, because we knew that things were going on. We know that if Bernie rightfully won Iowa, he would have caught so much momentum. And let me say this. By the time you get to Super Tuesday, but the time you get to South Carolina, if what had actually should have happened did happen, the weight of Buttigieg's endorsement wouldn't have meant nearly as much to Biden. That also would have played a role. And I think if Bernie had rightfully won Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, it would have basically been a foregone conclusion. So please talk about what I still consider to be the biggest detriment to our movement on the progressive side really growing at this point, and that is the power of corporate media and how it influences people to ignore the things that really matter.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to look at corporate media just institutionally, the difference between corporate media and, like, I'm just going to use me as an example, and how I do things. So if you want to get to the truth of things, do you go ask for comment and ask for the truth, or get your information from the politicians, from the DNC, from the police department? Because for years, Jen, you've been an advocate for criminal justice reform. Media just reported whatever the police told them, right?
Right.
So I do it the other way, where I get my information first and foremost from activists on the ground, from residents on the ground, from just citizen leaders. And you have to vet it. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation that goes on, but you generally get to the root of what's going on, not from like your sources at the DNC or in the Trump administration or the Biden administration, but from like people in communities. Like when I went to Flint for the first time, I didn't first try to speak with the mayor of Flint or the politicians. I spoke with the residents. I spoke with the activists, because that's where you find out where the bodies are buried. Yeah. So there's an institutional flaw, and it's intentional because corporations have bought the media. Thank you, Bill Clinton, for that. That basically, like when reporters are on the campaign trail, they're not actually with people. They're just following the candidates and the candidates' posse, their campaign advisors.
But, they're controlled with what they're allowed to say anyway. So all they're going to be allowed to put out there is what's been approved by that campaign and whatever the corporate donor allows. So it doesn't even matter if they're there or not there. They might as well not be there. I don't even see why they bother following them around. They're just going to repeat their talking points.
I can't tell you. I mean, I think I told Peter this story, but like when I was with TYT in 2016, I would go around covering Bernie, but I covered Hillary's campaign a bit. I covered Trump. I got the therapy bills to prove it. And I'll never forget it. I would just be in the crowd interviewing people, my cameraman with me in the crowd. And I was the only reporter in the crowd interviewing people before and after. Like I would look back and there would be the press stage where the cameras are, the reporters are, and they'd just be standing there on their phones. And in to their benefit of the doubt, also like they travel with the campaign and the candidates get there like late. But even when there was more time for these reporters to actually speak with people, they just didn't. They were just standing on the press stage, tweeting this. There is we talk about the disconnect between politicians and the people they represent. There's no connect at all between reporters and people. They'll do their focus groups like on CNN and this and that, which are highly staged. They'll do their town halls where, frankly, these questions are scripted. But I mean, I can't even tell you. I mean, from Flint to other places I've been, even at press conference I've covered. Like I'm usually activist press conferences, not government press conferences.
Yeah.
I'm always one of the few people there. I remember there was a lead crisis in Cleveland. Nobody knows about it. Like 100 children had high lead levels in like 90 days. And activists created a press conference at the halls of City Hall. Even the local media wasn't there. I was there just because I was passing through. I was coming back from Flint. So Pete, you asked me about the corporate media. They are basically incentivized to ignore the people who know what's going on the ground. I found out what was going on in Iowa. I was there, but my sources were not coming from the DNC or the state party. They were coming from precinct chairs that were there. They were coming from not just Bernie people, but other campaigns that were seeing abnormalities. My sources come from activists and others. Yeah, there's some kooky activists. You've met them. Standing Rock, I had to sift through.
There is no shortage of kookiness on the left.
No, we've got, and again, it's that balancing act you have to do, because a lot of the kooky ones want to be involved very thoroughly, but it's that temper that you gotta temper it to some degree.
And I get a lot of emails and text messages from them, and they're good
people.
I'm
sure, and they like to say they're your friend, and they know you on a personal level.
Jordan, this comment from Jason, I know have you ever met Jason?
Jason Call?
He ran for Congress in Washington. He was one of my BNC slate mates, but
I did not.
He is commenting about what it would be really nice would be to have an actually progressive network. And I know you had talked about that in the past, and the idea of people just putting their egos aside and coming together to sort of form some sort of like block. I mean, because I think that, and we're seeing it right now.
It's a great segue. It's a great segue.
The left eats their own. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't even really want to talk about that.
But it has to be discussed from the standpoint of, you don't have to talk about Jimmy. I think you just have to talk about what's really going on right now. I think listen, we're friendly with a lot of these people, that, but I do think that there is, for one, I do think there's a degree of jealousy. They don't like the fact that, he's basically becoming a hot commodity of sorts, and he's going to get a tremendous swoon from that in financial ways and other ways. But the reality is, if it's a great idea and it's worth pushing, there is this tendency on the progressive left to always want the pure circumstance. It's never going to happen that way. It's going to just happen organically. Like Chris Hedges says, it's just going to happen. You're not going to know when it's coming. It's just going to be there. And if something sparks and people really get behind it, there isn't this like universal great idea. Let's get behind it. Let's all work together and make it so.
It would be nice.
So, what is your take at this point? Because we've been paying close attention. You're like, look, this is a great idea, and I don't really care what you think of Jimmy. We need to be working in conjunction with one another and figuring out a way to make Medicare for all possible, as important as any issue that we're dealing with right now.
I think a lot of this goes to actually, believe it or not politics, but psychology and the characteristics of human beings. So an example, and I'm not saying this out of bitterness. I'm just saying this because it's true. Right. When I was at the Young Turks, for example, it was called TYT Network, but there wasn't actually a lot of elevation of anyone other than Cenk. And whatever, like, I'm not saying he's a bad, whatever, there's issues there. But my point is, from my standpoint, and I'm doing my job at Status Coup long-term, Jen's doing her job, my co-founder, Jen Dies, who's sick with COVID. We're doing our jobs if long-term, we're not the faces. You're either in this for clicks and Twitter followers and to grow fame, or you're in this to achieve goals. So to me, I have a healthy ego. Who doesn't like credit and, being followed? But at the end of the day, to me, I want to be able to cover more stories everywhere. And the only way I could do that is to hire other reporters, because I'm only one person. I want to expose the corruption, not just in Flint, but elsewhere. But I need more people. I need to create new quote unquote stars, so to speak. So for me,
you need a reporting network. You need you need like a team.
So to me, if you put Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball and Status Coup and name whatever, we could debate who gets to be at the table. But if you put them together, of course everybody could have their individuality also. But when you create a stronger network that has a variety in programming, there's comment. I mean, Jen, you did that pyramid, which I appreciate being on. You got commentary, analysis, investigative reporting, maybe comedy.
People got so offended by that, as if there's no value in entertainment, which there is value in entertainment, and there's value for all of it. But I think we need to be real about what a source is versus what is commentary. And it's just so ridiculous how people are, again, it's this tribalism. People just feel the need to just be so protective of someone they like, regardless of reason.
Yeah, we're entering that territory right now where people feel that you can't criticize Alex, and that's dangerous. It really is, because she's making a lot of missteps lately.
I can't tell you how many fucking it happened this morning. And it's not because like anyone's bad or ill will, but I have a lot of people constantly. I mean, when I was at Standing Rock, I had people asking me to help them organize events. When I'm, all over, I've had people asking me to personally get involved in the activism, and I've had to say, like, I can't do that because that's crossing a line. And I think my journalism is my activism, but I can't it's
People
not
don't understand that anymore.
Right.
There's no that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. It's not ethical for me.
No.
For example, like in MSNBC, it's totally, all these corporate outlets, it's totally ethical to go have drinks and go to Christmas parties with the people you're supposed to be covering and hold accountable. You couldn't catch me dead. But my point is, I think in the progressive sphere, and I've said this for years, it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit like a high school fucking clique. And
it's ridiculous.
Listen, I love Jimmy, and I was just on his show, and I appreciate him. But Jimmy doesn't have all the answers. Cenk doesn't have all the answers.
No.
If we don't all agree 1,000%, it doesn't make you a sellout or a fraud.
No, and I hate that. That's like it's cancel culture crap. We just don't have time for that. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I can't even. This is why I don't even want to talk about this. Right. So stupid.
Which is why checking your ego at the door is a very big part of the problem. And
I would like to say something about Roar Media, though, if we're going to talk about little organizations of female. I don't know if you heard of Roar Media yet, Jordan.
What's it called?
Roar, ROAR, Roar Media. No. And it's Savage Joy had invited me to come to this little group. And basically it's a network of media channels, podcasts, people that are it's like a female thing, but it's just raising up voices of more vulnerable communities. That's sort of the premise of Roar. But there is no ego. It's like they promote me anytime I put something out. Like they just want to build up everybody. It's like everybody wants everybody to do well. And for some reason, the egos on the left just cannot seem to get their act together.
Well, and Jen, you see it every day. Pete, you see it every day. I'm not going to name names, but you have people that literally all day, all they do is send their tweets to various DM groups to get retweeted.
Yeah.
I do that for Status Coup. I send Status Coup's tweets everywhere because Twitter fucking is another platform that, shadow bans and all that stuff. But I'm not spending my time trying to get my own tweets unless it's Status Coup content. There's too much, again, it's back to that human psychology. There's too much of this. Yeah, I want progressive change, but I also want to be a celebrity and this and that. Listen, for me, you actually, as a progressive media host, you actually tend to make more money. You actually tend to get more notoriety, if that's what you want. You actually tend to, if you actually do real investigative work. And to me, listen, it ain't all like TYT, yes, they did a lot of good things in the early years. They built up a cult following and they actually had resources. And when you have outlets that have resources and other outlets that have other followers, if you bring this together with actual funding, which very few of us have, Jen, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
You could do so many things. You could go cover progressive candidates in the field. You could go cover the stories like Flint. You could cover Standing Rock. You could cover other, like right now I have a freelance reporter doing coverage for us, freezing her ass off in northern Minnesota, covering the Line 3 pipeline protest.
Yeah.
I wish outlets with the funding. Because also it's a synergy, right, Jen? So if we had all of us come together and we had the funding to send people out in the field, then the commentators could react to that in the field reporting. Doesn't mean they can't do their other hot takes, but that's what I think needs to happen because you're not going to combat the corporate media with everybody living on their own islands.
And the corporate media is not going to send anybody out into the field to actually gather information because that's not in their best interest. They stopped doing that a long time ago. Mainstream media used to have actual journalists. There used to be journalists on TV.
The 96 Telecom Act changed everything, and it gradually happened over time.
And I always say this, even during the Dan Rather years, that was somebody who actually at one point was a journalist. These were people that did their own reporting and then would report on their own findings. That was what that was supposed to be. People haven't noticed the change. Look, Rachel Maddow used to be on Air America and I used to listen to her, following Ed Schultz. but people don't notice the gradual shift that we've obviously undertaken that has been this complete corporate takeover.
Yeah, if you see it in real time.
I'll tell you, I've said this before, but when I was at the Young Turks in my first year, I was doing well. We grew a pretty popular channel there, and I was on the campaign trail. And I was on the plane covering it was towards the end of the campaign. I was on the plane covering Bernie's campaign, and there was a reporter there that I started talking to from a corporate outlet, and he was decent. He was from a corporate outlet, but I didn't mind him. And before you know it, after we talked, like 2 days later, I got an email from an HR person at this corporate outlet, and whatever, they wanted to talk to me. I get on the phone with them. They want to create a progressive movement reporter. They offered me double than I was making at TYT. I'm a human being, so I thought about it.
You had to investigate that.
I thought about it, and I just said to myself, like, if a place has to create a progressive movement reporter, then it's probably not going to be what I think it is. And I also felt that I would be to Cenk's credit, in my first year there, I had full autonomy. I could cover what I wanted the way I wanted, and he gave me the room to do that. And I knew I worked at MSNBC. I knew that ain't happening at this outlet, so I turned it down, and I'm happy I did.
No, but I wish you didn't turn it down, because I have a feeling that because you turned it down, we had to be subjected to Brian Stelter's reliable sources. I'm telling you, man, there's no question it could have been you instead of him.
First of all, we have to go back to the fact that that my friend was married to Howard Kurtz. And
I did not know that.
And so I knew him, and he'd been down here. He'd been to the house a few times, and I knew him. And always nice. I was at their wedding, the whole thing. And then when all that went down with him, it was like, oh no. And now they're divorced. Now, I don't know that those two things have anything to do with each other whatsoever, but yeah, it was a fall from grace of gargantuan proportions.
You want to hear a behind the scenes story about Brian Stelter?
Sure.
I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. So I got arrested. I got arrested covering Black Lives Matter protests in St. Louis. My cameraman at the time, Ty Bayless, and myself were thrown in jail for a night. Not so bad compared to what other people go through. So anyway, I got out, and I said to Cenk, like, you going to do anything about this? I mean, I'm not talking like I didn't expect us to get any money, but like, let's fucking raise a stink, sue some people. Like, we were covering this as journalists. Like, I wasn't organizing a protest. I was covering it. Anyway, so that's another story. He didn't end up doing anything about it, but we wanted to get media attention, because you would think we're not like the Washington Post, but like, I'm a journalist. I was arrested doing my job. So I met Brian Stelter years earlier. Whatever. I think he's kind of like an inside the bubble elitist, but I reached out to him just saying like, hey, I don't know, maybe you didn't see this, because maybe you didn't see it, but my cameraman and I were thrown in jail. My cameraman is black. They put real handcuffs on him. They put zip ties on me and the white people. They treated him a lot rougher than they treated me. I saw in the jail, they threw a transgender woman in an isolated cell away from everybody else. In my cell overnight, there was a black person who went into diabetic shock, and they wouldn't open the jail cell to let him out. And it wasn't until I started screaming. I said I was from the New York Times, which was a lie. But I said, if you don't fucking open this door, this is going to be on the front page of the New York Times. And they opened the door. So I said to Brian, like, I didn't expect to be invited onto reliable sources, but I said, I would appreciate if you cover this, because I think it's important. And whether you're CNN or independent, we need to, stick for each other. And he said to me, I'll never forget it. He says, like, obviously, there's a lot of journalists, being mistreated and arrested, but like, we wouldn't cover that unless it was from like a mainstream outlet.
What?
But if it's happening to somebody from a mainstream outlet, I think that's the whole point.
He is a very, very easy target.
The best part about it, whatever. I mean, Jen, you know journalism. I mean,
I do.
Technically, he didn't say off the record. This was in a Twitter DM.
He said it.
So I went to Cenk. I said, have at it. Let's fucking go to town. I mean, this guy is claiming to be Mr. Reliable Sources. And he's saying if you're not from the basically if you're not from the Washington Post or New York Times and you're not arrested and thrown in jail for the act of journalism, then it doesn't matter. We shouldn't cover it. Cenk had his reasons. He didn't want to do it. But the point is, that's the elitism, the arrogance, the tone deafness of these corporate outlets. Because at the end of the day, when you live in New York and DC or Los Angeles, it doesn't make you a bad person, but it makes you pretty disconnected from what really struggling people all over the country are doing. This is why they were so shocked that Trump won, because they had no clue. I mean, I've been through the Rust Belt. I've seen these cities and towns that look like episodes of The Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
I wasn't remotely surprised that Trump won.
Right. So, yeah. That's the corporate media.
Yeah, and he only lost because he mismanaged COVID. That's it. He absolutely would have won again if he had handled it even some semblance of in a reliable way, but he didn't. And again, when you think about where the media is now and where it's going, that's why I think the importance of recognizing that we have to build this independent media movement, if you will, even if you aren't on the same network. You have to be media friendly to one another. That's why Jen going on Tim Pool's show, now we can talk about it. Jordan and I had actually talked in private about whether or not it was a good idea. And the reality is we do have to build these relationships. It's essential if we are going to enact major policy like Medicare for all.
I don't do things just for that reason, though.
No, but the importance of not being at odds with people for no particular reason.
I'll just talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about things and hear about policy. Like it doesn't really matter to me. I won't go on a show that's a circus for the sake of being a circus.
Like Alex Jones. That's not
meaningful discourse. But I'll talk to anybody anywhere about policy. Why would you not want to expand your audience? This never made sense to me. This is a total Democrat neo-lib thing. They do not appreciate sharing information.
No, and again, the reason why I brought up whether or not there is, obviously the importance of independent media, but also the vitality of corporate media is the fact that, Jen put out a tweet, which is absolutely factual, that Trump or Biden could issue an executive order declaring a national health emergency and expand Medicare to everybody, so effectively implementing Medicare for all. Well, a lot of people loved it, but the neoliberal crowd, including the horse whisperer, you know who that guy is, he got a hold of this tweet and they absolutely lost their mind. And needless to say,
you're not allowed to have anything involving a decent suggestion, Medicare for all, and Donald Trump in the same context.
If you're talking outside the bubble of MSNBC and CNN, it is amazing. I mean, I'm sure you experience it as well. The indoctrination of people and the way that they can't really think for themselves. Everything is a corporate talking point that they caught off of a CNN or MSNBC show. That is very, very dangerous when it comes to all the negative things that are going on right now. The complete, just trying to find a reason to say that $2,000 checks is not essential. How
they're against it because Trump's for it.
Exactly.
Well, it's so contrarian. These are children. This is the most ridiculous thing. But really, they've been doing this for years. Each administration comes in and undoes what the previous administration does and then adds more to it and makes it worse. And we just keep this sort of snowball effect. And yet none of them prosecute the previous administration. So then they just keep rehiring those same people to come in and do it again.
So what do you think is the key to building that divide, building the bridge from the divide that's happening right now? People are, when you think about some people that are like, oh, you voted for Trump. Oh, I don't ever want to talk to you again. I don't want to know you're alive.
Cancel.
I think that we have to get way past that. It's one thing to hate somebody like a Trump or a Corey Lewandowski, for example. It's another thing entirely to look at somebody who happened to vote because they felt that was the only person who was listening to them and saying, you know what? We have to find a way to come together and build that bridge.
You don't think calling them deplorables is the approach that we should go with?
That's not a winning strategy as far as I can tell. So what do you think, Jordan?
You've met all the people. You've spoken to all the Trump people. I mean, we know that the stereotypical person is a very small percentage of his. They
go to the rallies.
Yes, and that's who gets on the news because it's juicy. But the majority of the people that supported him are not those people.
Listen. I mean, this isn't a secret. My parents are Trump supporters. and they're good people. I mean,
and they're not out there with the Dixie flag, and
they're deeply misinformed. But I would say there's a lot more Trump supporters that are like my parents. I mean, frankly, my father is he's a Zionist. If Obama if Obama would have worn an Israeli flag pin and moved the embassy, my dad would be like drinking the Obama Kool-Aid. My dad voted for Bill Clinton. So the point is, listen, I remember in 2016, it was maybe September or October, and I was in Pennsylvania at one of these mega Trump rallies. He was hours late because there was actually a bad storm, so he was late. But all of these people waited, and it was this fucking extremely hot inside arena. And I was waiting, so I was doing interviews. And I remember interviewing somebody who, I don't know, to the naked eye, you could think is like one of these MAGA, white supremacist guys. Yeah. His head was shaved, MAGA hat. And I started interviewing him. And within, 5 minutes, he started crying because he was deathly afraid. His town was basically going like The Walking Dead, business after business going out, plant after plant going out. He had escaped being laid off from his plant, but they were downsizing and he was afraid. He had 2 kids in college, this and that. This was a Trump supporter. Yeah. So is there subconscious racism? Yeah. Is there, and there's conscious racism too among a lot of these people, but there's also deep-seated economic distress and fear that makes people susceptible to the other, to Muslims or Mexicans or this and that. And I'm not defending being racist, but you can't just do hot takes. You have to try and peel back the layer. Why are so many people misinformed to think like Mexicans are the ones stealing their jobs when it's actually the Democrats and Republicans who are selling their jobs to other countries?
I always say, do you really think somebody from Mexico City who manages to get into this country wants to work for $3 an hour? No, they are so desperate they'll take anything.
You know what? It's just the tendency to have everybody kick down, it's right. And this is not new. And I say it all the time. I don't care what your problems are in this world. It is not caused by our poor, most vulnerable, disenfranchised people. It's not caused by immigrants. It's not caused by people that are just desperate. And that's the other thing, is we are at a time where people are so incredibly desperate. So, it's almost like we're less accountable for our choices when we're desperate, because what wouldn't people do? And you're talking about Trump in 2016 when he was running on a populist message, right?
Yeah. But I also, to me also, the bottom line is I didn't lose friends, but I had a lot of friends giving me shit in 2016 because they were card carrying. We can't do Trump. And they felt all you're doing is covering Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party corruption, and you're not covering Trump enough. And I said, do you not see me at these fucking rallies, these Trump rallies? So because outside of the rallies, I'm not doing 24/7 Trump segments. What can I do that's not being done again and again and again all day, every day by all these other outlets? But to me, you asked, Peter, how do we bridge this divide? A major problem, and it goes back to the 90s, is partisan media. I mean, I'm openly progressive, right? But I'm not Team Blue or Team R because I bash them both. I just call corruption. But Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and MSNBC and now CNN and all of this tribalism is what is stoking this divide. I mean, QAnon, for example, which my partner Jen has done great work on, a lot of this shit is literally talking points they hear from Breitbart, from Alex Jones, from whatever. So I wish I had the answer, because if I did, I'd probably be pretty wealthy. But I think the partisan media that is pouring, it is okay to be partisan. I'm fine if Fox was just open and said, we're conservative. Yeah. We want to help the Republican Party. We'll have Democrats on, but this is where we stand and whatever. Yeah. But it's all this false advertising that we're fair and balanced, or MSNBC, whatever they're claiming to be, when it's clearly just an arm of the Democratic Party. This is what is brainwashing people. It ain't Russia. It ain't fake Facebook pages. It's the corporate media. And I think you asked, what can we do? This is why I think, honestly, independent media needs to band together more.
Jordan's website up.
Yep.
It's statuscoup.com.
Yes. YouTube.com/status coup. We are on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I want everyone to know. So I've been a member for a long time. I don't even know when I first joined, but
Thank you.
So if you go to Status Coup, well, that's the YouTube. But I mean, where do you? But you can join there too. Though there's a link.
Yeah. So Status Coup. statuscoup.com. You could join as a member. And, I think, listen, right now it's tough for everybody. I totally understand if people couldn't financially support us, but, we do things a little differently. Like, yes, I do come from a studio a lot, but we go out there. We just covered tonight protests outside Jeff Bezos' luxury penthouse in New York.
How's the guillotine looking? Are they how is that? I saw you could buy plans for $38.
They stacked like a Christmas tree Amazon boxes outside his apartment to represent all the deaths. So basically, if people can support us, we cover a lot of stories no one else does in the field. And you could become a member for $5 a month. So statuscoup.com.
I highly recommend that. You know what, people, it's like when people pay, you pay your cable bill, you pay your, satellite, and you pay all those things, and you're paying, unfortunately, for news that you're not getting. But I look at when I support people, when I join something like Status Coup, or I'm a Patreon member for different people, that's supporting the news that I use. So it's sort of like I'm contributing to my news sources. Now, it's unfortunate that this is the only way that this can be done, that we're basically double paying for things, but that's just the way it is. So if anybody can afford anything, these are people that are actually trying to get real stories and real information, and not just deliver talking points that are narratives of the corporate government.
Yeah. It's also liberating. I mean, this as a candidate, when you genuinely only have to answer to like working people because that's funding you. I mean, I don't have like any boss over me telling me if and how to cover Flint or anything else. So it's really liberating when you could grow just small dollar, $5 after $5 member. So we appreciate all our members.
Yeah, and listen, I was listening before.
I think my mom joined. Yeah. I'm pretty sure my mom.
No,
thank you.
I was listening before when you basically went off on that person who was like, you just don't get it. You're never going to find the perfect person that is going to give you everything you want every day, all the time. It's not going to happen. You have to accept
You shouldn't want that.
No, you shouldn't. You should want discord.
No, but generally the people like being in their echo chambers.
Well, that's the danger. That's
very comfortable.
If you want to be in an echo chamber, you watch MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News.
I can't.
You have to, if you want to question more, if you want to be able to understand what's really going on, because there are millions of people out there. I think about how powerful the independent media circuit could be if everybody, just kind of, were brothers in arms that saw it that way. That to me is.
I think amongst people that are really journalists, I do think it is that
even
way.
Political commentators.
I think, well, some of those people get along, but I think people that are real journalists, like, for example, Jordan, you do a lot of stuff that's very domestic. Most of your stuff is like things like Flint water crisis, Standing Rock. I mean, the political stuff. I mean, you really focus domestic. But like, if I want to know something that's going on in Venezuela, I'm going to go look up whatever Max said on the gray zone. So there are, there's definitely different niches of reporting that, where you don't cover that. That's not what your thing is. So, but people need to be seeking out actual information and not talking heads.
Well, I think I use my mother as a perfect example. I can't tell you how many times. She's just not like a political person. She puts on the news sometimes, but she's got other shit to deal with. And I remember I would show her my videos from Standing Rock. She'd be like, "Why isn't this on CNN?
Yeah.
Why are they shooting these people that are just banging drums? I don't understand." She was truly stunned, not only at what was happening, but that it wasn't all over the news. When people are actually informed, not the political diehards like us, but like people that aren't the political diehards, they're generally not happy with what they see. And that's the power.
Why they're not informed.
Right. That's the power of information, but you got to first get it to them. And that's part of, this is a broader problem, but the gatekeepers, YouTube and Twitter and Facebook.
Like, why aren't we talking about the 250 million person strike in India? Why is that not on the front? Like that to me is that was just completely overlooked.
The person who I think, it just kind of dawned on me, and you spoke to him once, that I really think should be on our side, but spends way too much time kissing up to the establishment is Michael Moore, because he really does get what is going on. And he has a very large platform. He's a very wealthy man. And there's a lot of things he could be doing to really furthering this progressive movement.
See, I don't like that you're saying
no, he does, but he gets a little too comfy with corporate media sometimes. And I think he misses things. Jordan, would you care to share what your thoughts are and whether somebody like Michael or, it could be anybody that, could really, has that type of a platform, that type of a megaphone that could really
I just think
help
people
advance.
people doing like what they think is.
I think that, listen, I mean, straight up, I reached out to Michael Moore and begged Michael Moore for many, many years to share my stuff on Flint, not to like boost myself, but to get it the fuck out there. Like, if I break something on Flint, it might get attention. If Michael Moore screams about it, it's getting attention.
Exactly.
MSNBC might cover it, and I just couldn't. I don't know if he didn't see it. I don't know if he wasn't paying attention. I don't know.
No, I mean, from my
that kind of thing, I feel like happens.
If we're being completely honest, I think Michael absolutely knew what was going on, and I think he probably was warned that if you do talk about this, we will not have you on MSNBC ever again.
I happen to know that some of that is true. Yes, I happen to know that there was a politician in Flint that he's friends with that is corrupt, and they're childhood friends, and he's just blinded by this politician who was telling him, this guy isn't real and he's making it up, blah, 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 blah. But also the bottom line is, folks, a lot of these people have egos. It doesn't make them bad people, but they have egos. For example, I broke a major story. Jen and I broke a major story with Vice a couple months ago on the Flint water cover up. Yeah. I was like, all right, Moore has to share this, right? I mean, I got documents. I got timeline. I got the governor of Michigan covering up a deadly Legionella outbreak. This is the governor, by the way, that Michael Moore has crusaded against, Rick Snyder. And he wouldn't share it because he was promoting his climate change thing, his documentary against whatever his documentary was that had all that controversy. So again, I don't think he's a bad person, but a lot of these people, they have their own interests. And if it doesn't align at that moment with your story, but this is the opportunity we have, because if the progressive movement came together, think about it. If the progressive movement came together, progressive media in specific, whether it's Michael Moore, whether it's Kyle, I'm gonna hold my nose and even say TYT for a second. If all these people came together and lifted not just my stuff, but other stuff too. Lee Camp has done great stuff.
Yes.
Lee Camp has done great stuff, and he's kind of in a wilderness at RT. I'm not belittling him, but a lot of his stuff should be front page news. Ben Norton,
I mean, a foreign agent.
Yeah, the list goes on. Imagine for a second if we were all together when I broke that Flint story on Vice.
Sure,
it could have been elevated to the point where the corporate media really can't ignore it and keep a straight face.
As crazy as this is, there's also something to be said for the Google algorithm and whether or not you are constantly putting in print and word that is out there and repeating itself. Google will suppress, but it can only do it so much if you're getting hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people constantly talking about it, and then it becomes a talking point. That was one of the things that we were successfully able to do in the latter stage. We learned a lot when we ran against Wasserman Schultz, but one of the things that became very effective towards the latter stages of the campaign, we had this great person who helped out from Silicon Valley, and she just really loved Jen, and she taught us a lot about how to really get the word out there, and that helped us in the latter stages of the campaign.
That was our search engine optimization expert.
And that can absolutely work here. But I'm telling you guys, for any of the people that are out there, not going to name any names, you know who they are. We'll just say Cenk, because of all the people in independent media, he's got the biggest platform. And if you have a personal beef with Jimmy or whatever it is you have going on right now, I'm telling you, this is the time where you're going to have to make a choice. You're either going to be on the side of the people and what needs to be done, or you're going to kowtow to corporate interests. You can't have it both ways. You just got to make that choice. And I hope a lot of people that are out there, one person in particular who I will not name, who got so down and dirty, was actually attempting to dox Brianna Joy Gray, who is as good as anybody you could ever hope to have on your side in independent media. If that's the road that you're going down, then you're not on the side of independent media.
I'll name Ben Dixon. Go ahead.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and by the way, so I kind of have a little bit of a girl crush on her, and Like, the thing is, like, in my mind, if we were ever to do this again, like, that's who I want to be working with us. Like, that's who I want. That's my, yeah. And I told Katie I want to come to the next time they have a Zoom sleepover. Yeah,
Jen has developed, she's very friendly with Katie and with Rania, and the only person she hasn't connected with yet is Bree. So it's like, she's gotta. Like, she's like that. Yeah, like, still untouchable.
I think what your point is, though, it goes a long way. Listen, everybody's got all these people that are public figures have a million people asking them to do something, asking them to retweet something, asking them to do something. I mean, I can't even fucking tell you how many text message, emails, and shit I have asking me to do something. I wish like you
coming on our little show. I know, and then even though we had to be bumped a little bit for Jimmy, it's all good.
I'm sorry about that, but the bottom line is, like, at the end of the day, I actually think I'm not trying to adopt Hillary Clinton's Stronger Together talking points. But I do think, if we would everybody could have their individualism, everybody could maintain their ego. For example, Kyle Kalinske, he's been doing this, I think, for 10 to 15 years. Yeah. He's built up almost 1 million subscribers. So I could see, I don't know if this is how he thinks, but I could understand why somebody who's been doing this for so long, why the fuck, I busted my ass. Why would I want to go join a fucking group thing when it's
not a win for him. It's there's nothing in it for him.
Got to pay forward.
I'm just naming that as an example. I don't think that's his mentality. But my point is, like, Jimmy, for example, he's fucking rocking it. Why in his mentality would he need to join like a network? But at the end of the day,
we couldn't even get him to mention our campaign.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll be the first one to say, I don't care if Jimmy likes it or not. Tim Canova is fucking crazy. He ranted at me privately for daring to interview you. I said to him, "Are you running, Tim? I mean, if you're not running, am I blacklisted from interviewing somebody else who is running?"
Even if you were, what would that matter?
Exactly. I
still multiple people. That's the whole point of being independent.
I'm gonna make a pitch right now, and I just have to say, this is all about making sure that everybody understands just how important it is to check your ego at the door. Not only did Jimmy never once mention that Jen was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz,
even though he talks about her all the time.
We went to his comedy show when he was in Miami. I've known Jimmy for a few years, and I was very fortunate enough to have a private dinner with him and Jordan in Chicago. He is not a bad guy, but he's a very stubborn Irishman.
Well, don't make it sound like it was a private dinner at a penthouse.
No. It was a very nice restaurant in Chicago, but it was a great experience. And my point is, he decided to dedicate half of his show to bashing Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
And he knew we were there.
That's
the thing. Like, he knew we were there.
And so not only would he not mention that Jen was there, he actually had Tim Canova, who was there, stand up and do a bow to the audience. 500 people, mind you. There were a lot. Jimmy is very popular.
And not a single mention that there is a current person challenging her, even though we said they're in bad mouth.
This circles back to what we talked about. High school bullshit.
It's
correct.
So ridiculous.
And Canova badmouthed you to me, to Jimmy probably, and Jimmy probably just bought it.
And that's it. I know. But that's the thing. And that's why the whole purpose of the chart I made is to explain to people that when you're getting information from a source, you have to distinguish that source. If you're dealing with someone who's an actual journalist, they're going to find out if what somebody is saying is true. They're not going to take somebody's word for it and then just sort of ghost somebody. So anybody who would do that is not an actual journalist. And that's what I want people to understand is a very one-sided thing.
And my point is, despite all of that, we support Jimmy's idea.
Well, yeah, that has nothing to do with it.
Because it's not about us. It's not about, again, I'm not going to name names. A lot of you know who they are. A lot of people just don't like Jimmy. Okay? There's a person who I will not name that used to work with Jordan, who I am not a fan of, and says a lot of nasty stuff about him, and it makes me sick. So, you know what?
I think I got in a Twitter fight today.
Well, no, actually, it's not her. It's
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
The other one. And so we get to a point where if you actually are fighting for the issues that matter most, if you really want to deliver, the journalism that we need, and if you really want to build the coalition that we can build, where if God willing, 4 years from now, whether it is somebody like Nina Turner, or dare I say, even if it's somebody like Andrew Yang, you're going to need to check your egos at the door, because the establishment is running out of ways to screw with us. And if we can, in this case, elevate Jordan's story, I have no doubt we're extremely grateful that he took the time to come on with us tonight, but I have no doubt that Crystal is going to have him on Rising, and there will be a lot of other shows where we'll be able to, we have to spread the word. Yeah. These are the types of stories where everyone needs to be talking about it, and we need to be helping each other out. If we do that, we can make this happen, because one thing that conservative Republicans always do, no matter how much fighting they have on their side, and they welcome primaries on the Republican side, they always fall in line when it's all said and done.
I just, the thing that's happening with Jimmy with this is sort of the same thing. And it's the same people that were hating on Trump or attacking him from the right. So he would do something right, but you can't give anybody credit for anything that's a decent idea. So, okay, that's the same thing that they're doing with Jimmy. They just don't like the messenger. So
I also think, and I mentioned this to Jimmy tonight, I think there's kind of a off-putting thing that's developing. Maybe it's been there and I just didn't notice. But since when is like the progressive movement a meritocracy system? Like these people are talking like, no, he's not a movement leader. He doesn't have.
They did that with Assange. They do the same thing. It's like they label somebody how they label them.
AOC, who I happen to respect, I don't agree with her on on this, but I'm not going to throw her out with the bathwater. But like she tweeted out like, well, I'm not getting the demand from official movement leaders, and to me, that's just probably unintentionally obnoxious. I mean, like you were a bartender 5 minutes ago, which is fine. Like that's why people loved you, because you were a real person. Yeah. But like, you need to be with National Nurses United to make the demand? Do you need to be with, I don't know, our revolution to make the demand? Like, we should not be like, Sam Cedar, and I used to work with her, Nomiki, were bashing Jimmy. And I think Jimmy goes too far sometimes. And I've told him
100%.
I just think he crosses over to being counterproductive.
But they were saying like he doesn't even have a history in political theory, and what experience does he have? Like when did this become a resume system? Because to me,
well, this is also the danger, and this is one of the reasons, and you know this as well as anybody, there is this crossover with people who bend to the progressive left, but they're also true liberals in the sense that they value decorum and education as much as the neoliberals do. They don't like street people and 9 to 5, but lunch pail, punch the clock people being the leaders of any type of a movement. They really do look down on the low educated. They really do. It's a very big part of the problem. And this is one of the things, I mean, obviously it gets taken to a whole other level. You saw this, I'm sure, repeatedly over the course of the primary, especially in Warren's camp, where she had a lot of those heavy academias that if you're not, college educated, master's degree, philosophical things like it, they don't even want to know you.
But that's very much how they are. That's what it is.
It goes two ways. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a master's degree. There's nothing wrong with fine. That's cool. But
people that don't have it, they have their own style.
Right. And I also think at the end of the day, the bottom line is nobody has a monopoly on giving the blessing in the progressive movement. Like Cenk, for example, who I'm not going to get into the whole thing. People know, I was let go and there's issues between us. But, if Cenk came up with this idea, the very same people that are against it would be for it. I mean, that's just a fact. That's just a fact.
That's true.
So we need, the bottom line is, and I say the bottom line a lot, at the end of the day, Nomiki, Sam Cedar, Benjamin Dixon, they don't have a monopoly and they don't get to decide who's capital P progressive enough, or who's accomplished enough, or who's a movement leader enough. Just like Jimmy doesn't get to decide, I don't get to decide. And call me old fashioned. I think I know what I'm talking about. No disrespect to these people that sit in the studio. There's nothing wrong with it. It offers a purpose. But I'm in the trenches. During a pandemic, I just drove a very long distance. Pete, you know where.
Oh, yeah.
For a very important story, risking myself, my wife's health, 9 hours straight, 2 ways, myself.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's value in commentary, but those people too, even Jimmy sometimes, you're just disconnected if you're not in the trenches. And I get disconnected sometimes. I have such bad cabin fever journalistically because I haven't been able to travel as much as I normally do. Because when you're home for a while, it's just human nature. You kind of lose touch with how bad it is out there. So I think that, a lot of people need to take a step back, whether it's Jimmy or these people ranting against Jimmy. Like, nobody has a monopoly on truth. Nobody has a monopoly on what is the best strategy or is not. I just look at it from a purely mathematical standpoint, this forced the vote thing.
Yeah.
She's got a 4-seat majority. There's 7 capital P Medicare for all progressives right now. Yeah. There's four more coming, possibly 5 if Nina Turner pulls it off. So you do have the numbers right now to demand something.
Yeah.
She's not going to win the speaker. She ain't getting Republican votes. And if these 7 said, we want something for it, and I really think it's a really crappy response and rationalization to say, well, it's not going to pass the first try. Do you think Martin Luther King and Harvey Milk and Gloria Steinem and indigenous leaders, and you think they were like, well, we shouldn't protest because it's not going to pass tomorrow? Like, that's absurd. That's absurd. Of course, it's not.
Do that, but that's the same thing as only backing candidates that can win.
And not only that, but you know what? Okay, so it doesn't pass, but you actually think it's okay for the Speaker of the Democratic Party to go on the floor and say $600 is substantial? I mean, at some point, you just have to. I understand that there are some people you're never going to get to, but it gets to the point where a lot of them are looking at it and saying, you know what, this is insane. And then Trump, in classic Trump fashion, totally comes in and totally embarrasses Pelosi, totally embarrassed her. She doesn't know what she's doing.
No, they are their own worst enemy. Only they could actually make him look like he has a good idea.
Yeah,
ironically, if Trump would have done what he did yesterday in August, he'd probably remain
president. 100%. Well, you know what? He didn't.
If he had done an emergency UBI, he would. I mean,
if Trump, but again, he shouldn't. He didn't want to be president. He just loves the attention. There's something to be said for that. 100%. But if he really,
I think he wants to remain president too, because he also doesn't want to be criminally prosecuted.
And I totally him out of there. I'm totally going to pardon myself. Well, let me tell you something. He is going to. You know what I think he'll do if he pardons Assange, Snowden, and Reality Winner? I think he'll do that, and then he'll pardon himself. I think he'll catch the windfall from all of the good the good press from the progressive side, and then
I don't want to get people excited, but I actually think there's a 30 to 40% chance that he does pardon Snowden and or Assange, only because he wants to drive the CIA, the FBI, and all these people mad. Not because he's like a thinker and knows that these agencies have done a lot of bad things.
No, my idea was he needs to think that that's the best way to basically screw over the establishment. That's the best way, especially to piss off people like the Clintons.
And not only that, but we all know that he is going to do something. He's going to start.
And honestly, I don't care why he does it. I just sit there and yes, of course he should pardon Edward Snowden, but he's got to pardon. I don't worry daily about Edward Snowden's personal upkeep.
Well, he's got to.
Assange
is number one, and the scary thing is, when you've got somebody like Sarah Palin saying you've got to pardon Assange, but then Alex is wishy-washy on whether we should pardon him or not.
That was upsetting.
This is where the partisan hack politics, because again, I know why Alex is doing this, because she saw what happened to Tulsi when Tulsi spoke out against the military-industrial complex. They completely buried her where she stood, and she is afraid that the same thing might happen to her. She's got big ambition, whether it's to run against Schumer, whether it's to run for president.
Say you're progressive and then have a very definitive stance on Julian Assange. I'm sorry, I do not see how those things are compatible. I just don't.
By the way, I mean, I love him. Bernie was a little wish-washy on it too. So
yeah. And it's unacceptable.
No, Bernie says, well, we definitely have to pardon Julian Assange, but I have to say he's done a lot of bad things. It's like, Bernie, who gives a shit?
I gotta tell you, you actually do a pretty good Bernie.
He does a good Bernie. He does a good Bernie. He does a good Bill Clinton. He does Trump.
I got to tell you, I've been paid a lot of money to screw over the American people. I've been paid quite handsomely in many ways. And I keep saying, we got to get this lady into Congress because Slick Willie's a little alone on Capitol Hill. I'm so tired of Hillary. I can't even look at her anymore. She's
you're in the wrong business.
You think?
Yeah.
We actually have masks.
I'm not as good as I'm not as good as Mike McRae. Mike's really good.
Yeah.
He's really good. Got to give him his due. But I do a better Bernie than he does and a better Trump. I will say that. I'm not an egomaniac.
He does a Jesse Ventura that's really good, though.
Well, we definitely
Your
have.
Jesse sounds like
Jesse's
he's mentally challenged.
Could you imagine if the Green Party had put me on the ballot instead of that total waste of space?
You make him sound mentally challenged.
I'm not. No.
I'll say, Jen. I mean, before I go, I will say, I think that obviously you're going to do what you want to do, but I think that listen, it's not easy to run for anything during a pandemic. There's obstacles outside of a pandemic. If there was no pandemic, a lot of obstacles for progressive candidates, particularly in traditional Democratic establishment districts like Florida's 23rd.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, Cori Bush won on the second try. There's others that have won on the second try. So whether it's for that district or elsewhere, I just think, however you think you could, accomplish the most change. But I definitely think you are a strong candidate, and I hope to see you in the future doing something like that.
We definitely hope to have you on again. And, the beautiful thing, and again, I know you've been doing this for about 5 hours straight now. I mean, this is pretty impressive, man. I mean, we love Graham, Graham Elwood, for those of you who don't know, awesome guy, had Jen on. And of course, obviously Jimmy, who's leading a major charge right now for the progressive movement. And of course, coming on with us tonight, probably the longest segment that you've done. And obviously we'd love to have you on again. Guys, remember, it's Status Coup. .com, and it's also youtube.com/status coup.
Everybody be a member. This is how we get information, because the truth is that I'm not driving for 9 hours to go somewhere to get a story. I'm not standing out in Standing Rock, and I'm just not. So the only way that I'm going to get that information is to pay someone else to get it, and that's what you get. So
the most important thing,
I might use that in an ad, by the way. Go ahead.
Well, that's how I feel about it. I feel like I need this information. I'm not going to go get it myself. You need to compensate somebody to get the information for you. So I'm not driving 9 hours.
And don't. Oh, there's Glory. Gotta love Glory, our buddy. She's always coming on board. The one thing, and the one thing I will say, don't underestimate the value and the power of the message that you pass to millennials and Gen Zers that they can pass on to their parents and so on. That in many ways is how it gets out there. The closer you are to somebody who is not seeing it the way that needs to be seen, they can make their own decisions, but the difference between what is actual news and what is fake news is a big, it matters. And being able to get this story out here, Jordan's story about the legitimate theft of the Iowa Democratic caucus. The election was stolen from Bernie, but this is ironclad stuff now. There is actual, you want to call it fuckery, excuse my English, but there was actual coordination between the DNC and the Democratic Party of Iowa to make sure it wasn't about Buttigieg. It was just making sure that Bernie didn't win. That was the primary objective. And you've got actual evidence that proves that that's the case. This story needs to get out there, and it needs to be spread as far and wide as possible. So read it, like it, share it. We have a wonderful new volunteer, Gio, who's with us, who is writing blogs for Generational Change. If he writes about this, that's going to be another.
By the way, I'm super fucking jealous because we've been doing this. Status Quo's been doing this a lot longer than you. You got all these fancy graphics and viewer comments on the screen and all this shit that we don't.
StreamYard, you push the button, Jordan.
No, but I see all viewer comments are on the screen and all these.
Switching it up, we're making sure.
How do you? I mean, look.
Then maybe I'm tech challenged because I don't know how to use it.
So it's better than Zoom. We started off with Zoom, but StreamYard's it's just a better thing than Zoom. But this is, look, I'm a dinosaur. You can't eat. I mean. So if I can do this, really anybody can do this.
One person I want to leave you with before you go. Her name is Anna Eskamani. She is very likely going to run for governor in Florida. She is a true progressive. She's in the one progressive bastion of the state, which is, of course, the I-4 corridor.
It's
between
almost unheard of. I know.
Tampa and Orlando.
So suspect about the concept.
I went to college in Tampa.
Yeah. No, she's her district. No, she is in Orlando, but not that far. I mean, again, but
she's central and she's running and she's awesome.
Yeah, there's a couple of good progressives in Central Florida. Her and Carlos Guillermo Smith, but Anna. Basically,
Ron DeSantis belongs in jail after what he did.
Well, but again, look at our bar. Well, okay, coming after Rick Scott, quite honest, who should also be in jail.
If you haven't connected with Rebecca Jones yet, that's definitely somebody. I wish I had a connection to. We don't. But to get her on the show to talk about I try to tell the Democrats in this state that we're involved with that are actually on the right side of what needs to happen. Forget about running against Marco Rubio. You're not going to beat him, but there is a legitimate shot at knocking off DeSantis. Not just because you could actually have a true progressive with no baggage, unlike Gillum, with all due respect. Anna's a great candidate.
Yeah, she is.
She really knows her shit. She is doing a great job up in Tallahassee.
Squeaky clean.
She is also in the right part of the state if you want to win a statewide race. The accessibility from Tallahassee down to Miami, if you're right in the middle, that is exactly where you want to be. She is going to have the establishment choice is going to be Nikki Fried. There is no question that that's who it will be. And Nikki is going to have, the establishment behind her, among other things, but it's definitely going to be those two.
And it should be worth your while to possibly look into that.
Yes. So there is no question that she is definitely somebody that if you can get on your own, or I will definitely throw a word in with her whenever she's ready, when it's the right time. Now it's not the right time, but of course.
I don't know. When is DeSantis up?
2022. The gubernatorial election will be the same time if Jen were to run against Debbie again. That would be August of 22. Most of the gubernatorial candidates will probably get in sometime in the spring. It's not going to happen right now, but give it a few more months. There'll definitely be a handful that get in.
We already kind of know where it's going.
Yeah,
I happen to think you guys would know better than I because you're down there. I think if Andrew Gillum, who I think ran a really strong primary campaign.
Oh yeah,
of course.
If he would have not sprinted away from Medicare for All, done photo ops with Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Well, yeah, we talked about that.
With Hillary Clinton. There was a lot of voter suppression too, but he came pretty close. And I think he would have won if he would have ran the primary campaign that he ran in the general.
Speaking of which, one last thing. We do have the Florida Democratic Party chair race, which is coming up, I think, the second week of January. We've already had one person on, Janelle Christensen, who's really good. We are going to hopefully have a few more on as we go forward. I could tell you right now, the choice of the establishment is Manny Diaz. He is personal friends with Michael Bloomberg and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They have their nice little network going on.
Trying to coordinate as the head of the party.
He is I happen to be friendly with his ex-wife. He was the ex-mayor of Miami Beach. And this is a guy who just look at, I can't even get into it, Jordan. Just look at his rap sheet. It's pretty ugly.
Can I ask you a question, Peter, for the audience? Yeah. You have a Debbie Wasserman Schultz bullseye in your home or a piñata? Because I don't know anybody that hates Debbie Wasserman. I think you hate her. I think you hate her more than Tim Canova, who's deranged. And I
hate her for the right reasons. I don't hate her.
I appreciate it. I'm just saying.
He just knows that she's the true impediment to progress, and in a way that is just so massive for our whole state.
It's not only that, and again, from my perspective, I've been a Florida resident for over 8 years, and I can tell you, she runs this state.
Yeah.
She runs it.
That's the thing. She's the biggest impediment to progress. So that's where it's sort of all the roads
if anybody needs proof of that, the fact that Manny Diaz, with all of his dirt and the things, with all due respect, if Lourdes, you're watching, I'm sorry, it is what it is. If what this man has been involved with, what he's been involved with, knowing that Michael Bloomberg now thinks he owns the Democratic Party in Florida.
He owns the Democratic Party in the country.
And on top of that,
Cubans in Miami too.
Oh yeah, well listen, and if South Florida still thinks that they run the state of Florida, which they think they do, this is a really big problem. And Debbie is at the head of this because Debbie is very close with Bloomberg.
He hates her. I have to hear this all.
And this is but again, this is a big problem. So if the party's ever going to get out of its own way, we've learned a lot of things recently that we're going to be working on that we'll talk about at a later
there's certain
date.
people that we need to not be in charge of the party.
But there's no question that for anybody who watches Jordan's channel, definitely pay attention to the Florida Democratic Party chair race. Like I said, Janelle Christensen, we've done a podcast with her. Definitely check her out. Ayanna Townsend, we're going to hopefully have her on. We definitely want to make sure
we won't be inviting Manny Diaz.
No, Manny doesn't need an audience. He's got plenty of
We like to give
space.
A platform for people that don't have the corporate platform.
Correct.
That's the whole point. So if you already have the corporate platform, you don't need to be on ours.
Jordan, any final thoughts or comments you want to make before you head out for the night? Definitely, it's been great. This is, like I said, I think we're starting to hit our stride a little bit. We're definitely getting into a rhythm now. And like I said, for Jen, if she is going to run against Debbie again, name recognition and obviously fundraising are probably the two most important things that we would need to cover.
Yeah.
Well, my parting words are keep up the good work. I think you're starting to realize that creating content is extremely hard and laborious.
Yes.
And it's not really a 9-to-5 situation. No. So keep up the good work. And I look forward to seeing what you do next, because I think that I recall I met you with Peter in New York before you ran.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a pretty decent judge of people. I could kind of smell bullshit pretty quickly. And I think you're the real deal. So I hope whether it's, through media or politics, whatever you do, I will cover or participate, because I think, Florida is a really important state. I think Florida is one of the biggest, other than the Pentagon. I don't know another more ground zero for climate change than Florida. I will leave you with this. One thing that we are extremely grateful for, and I do think is if there is a key factor in Jen running again, Sunrise Miami is a phenomenal grassroots
Sunrise movement is definitely
if we knew for sure we would have the endorsement of the Sunrise movement, it would make the decision a hell of a lot easier.
That's the other thing. We didn't get the national.
But I could tell you that the person who is the head of the Miami chapter and has a lot of influence politically now, he is a major supporter of Jen, desperately wants her to run again. This is a conversation that will be had at a later date, like I said.
Now. And you know what? And I see Jason Call posted something about running again. Every district is different and strategy is just what it is. And it's not the same everywhere.
And in many ways, you have to build it. There's really something to be said for building relationships with people in your community when you're not a candidate.
Well, and it's just, but every
which Tim Canova didn't do, by the way.
Never.
Well, he was never from here. He never really had a network here.
Even that wasn't enough. And I will say this, Jordan, one thing to keep an eye on in the future, I would say.
You sure? I have a list. You just gave me a full list.
Yeah, well, the list can never be long enough. Never ever be long enough. But I will say this. Of all the issues that Jen thinks is the impediments, if you will, for her successfully unseating Wasserman Schultz, labor is number one.
We'll have to have an episode.
Yeah, the head of the Broward AFL-CIO his name is Dan Reynolds, and he's the one that ensures that Debbie is protected. He's protected her for 25 years, and he went a step further, because when Canova ran, he granted a meeting or a screening with the members of the AFL-CIO. He broke charter, and he did not grant her a screening when she ran.
He wouldn't even let me.
Where's my man Fred Frost when you need him?
Oh, we love Freddie.
Let me tell you, Freddie he loves her. He's like
fucking Fred Frost.
Yeah, he's like a broken man. He's like,
I met with Fred Frost for drinks in Miami once. It was awesome.
No,
he's great.
I could tell you what he did do. What Freddie did for us probably was as important as anything. He prevented the CWA from endorsing Wasserman Schultz. Yeah. Maybe the one big organization that didn't do it. And like I said, it would take him forever. He has so many wonderful stories about Debbie crying and shit like that, among other things. It's
Jordan, she actually was at a meal with a bunch of these labor guys at our local here.
Yeah.
And she said, and they were like stunned. She said, and I quote, "I don't know what you labor people's problem is with trade agreements."
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's what she said to this group.
Well, you have to, and that's why name recognition and the fundraising is so important, because how many people in this district actually know that Debbie was one of, I think, 3 or 4 Democrats who voted to fast track the TPP?
But they'll keep endorsing her.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Free
That's why
Jordan.
building up the movement is important. So with that said,
thank you so much, Jordan.
Can't thank you enough. And obviously the media circuit awaits, I'm sure, tomorrow and many days forward. And if there's anything,
watch Status Coup, get your news there. It's very good.
If there's anything we can do to continue to help spreading the word about, the latest story with what the DNC did in Iowa, we'll be more than happy to do it. Thanks,
guys. Appreciate it.
Jordan.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.